This is News Guardian. News Guardian.
Love your show. You got great topics. You got great guests.
On WFJX, Fox Radio 910.
And we are back on News Guardians. This is your News Guardians, Chip Tarbutton.
And I'm Mike Powell.
And we are here today to rock your world. Or something.
That's the way to start off the day. Rock your world.
Well, Mike's been busy.
Yeah, I have been. I went out and did an interview with one of our local officials, Sherman Lee.
Well, and just to set this up, you know, the hot topic for everybody politically is around the immigration thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big issue. It's an issue that's not going to go away.
Well, and of course, the White House views it as a PR problem. I thought that's kind of funny.
I think that's hilarious. This could go down in college books, you know, in PR classes as possibly one of the worst PR problems ever in the history of the United States.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, if I'm the White House, I'm firing my PR people, whoever they are done.
So, I mean, not that it's a real problem. It's just a press on it.
Just a PR problem. We just didn't spin this the right way.
Yeah, this is the fact that they're finding corpses along the border where, you know, eaten by animals because, you know, and you're porting 12-year-old girls 1,500 miles by drug cartels. What could go wrong with that kind of
Babies
thing?
washed up on the shore of the Rio Grande.
Yeah, well, what's
sickening?
What could go wrong with that? Yeah, but it's all good. But we got a couple stories about the immigration thing, but as you may or may not know, you know, this is one of those national stories, but it's going to become a local story. It's very likely to become a local story. And in fact, the latest information we have shows that there's groups of those illegal immigrants that are swarming across the border being detained and held in both Bristol, Virginia, and Stanton, Virginia. So, Mike, I asked some of our local officials a very telling question. What would happen, or what are you going to do if and when, and it's increasingly looking like when, somebody comes to Roanoke and says, hey, you know, will you house some kids? So what did you find out?
Well, I emailed out to all the city council members, city manager, mayor, etc., just to find out, I guess, most importantly, has Roanoke been contacted by the federal government asking if they could bring any of the, I say illegal aliens, but undocumented aliens to Roanoke. And the response I got from most folks was no, none of us have heard of anything about the federal government asking to bring any people here. And one thing with that, too, I'd like to say is, and one of the issues across the country right now in a lot of localities is the locality itself is not even being contacted by the federal government. The federal government basically is just showing up and dropping off a bunch of people. And I guess that is, they don't necessarily have to contact the locality because sometimes the federal government will work a deal with a private organization like a church group or something or other, and they will pay that group to house the kids. But needless to say, none of the officials in Roanoke City have been contacted by the government to consider housing at the moment. That's not to say that it's not going to come. Sherman Lee, he's a Roanoke City Council member. He was very cooperative. I appreciate that, Sherman. If you're listening, he was willing to sit down and have coffee with me and discuss the issues. And I think he had a lot of, quite honestly, some good insight on it. I was happy with the conversation we had. One of Sherman's biggest things that he discusses, to start off with, he feels that we need to have a contingency plan. We need to pre-plan. Unlike what the city typically does, he is looking at pre-planning.
Planning?
Yes, pre-planning for a potential issue. He stated that, it's an issue that needs to be thought about now, and it's not going to go away. And he's so right about that this is an issue that's not going to go away. Every locality across the United States really has got to get on the ball and figure out what they are going to do if all of a sudden they are, have a bunch of new folks living with them that don't speak English and children that would need to be educated, etc. One of his ideas, he didn't think that, as far as he would like to see a task group put together to, pre-plan for this, but not just Roanoke City. He'd like to have a task group that involved the whole valley, Roanoke, Salem, Vinton, Roanoke County, and have everyone discuss it basically to figure out what spaces could be available if they were to send someone here. And Now, you may be thinking, okay, well, that sounds like he's all in favor of them coming here. Not necessarily. He does view the whole issue as a human suffering issue, and he couldn't be any more right on that. It truly is a human suffering issue. You know, with all these children coming across, nowhere to go. I don't think almost really no one in their right mind is going to turn away a little kid who comes somewhere, and all of a sudden you're going to say, all right, just get out of here.
Well, that's the genius of this plot, is that you create this untenable situation where you got a 12-year-old kid sitting on your doorstep, and you can't just leave the kid to starve. So you're right. I mean, while they need to be sent back to the country of origin, you can't just, like, you know, say no and kick them to the curb.
Yeah, in the meantime, no, you know, who's going to do that to a child? I mean, not me. If a little kid came to my door, personally, to my house, and said, I've got nowhere to go, I've got no food, I've got nothing, and I'm sick, I would say, come in. I will help you. There's no question about it. And then I would figure out a resolution to the problem.
Well, and this is why, you know, Greg Aldridge, News Guardian's Greg Aldridge has been saying for years, and he's been right all along, that the UN's been, they're going to classify these people as refugees, and then the United States has to take them because that's part of our UN charter, and then we have to repatriate them because they're going to be considered refugees, even though the crisis in Central America has been happening for 30 years. Yeah, I mean, and you know, Honduras and all these countries are now hitting us up for more. They want more aid from us so they can, you know, improve the conditions in their country to keep this from happening. But all that aside, you know, you can talk about the big picture. But sooner or later, it's very likely that kids are going to show up on the doorstep of people in the Roanoke Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. It is certainly very likely. The flood of illegals coming across the border isn't slowing down whatsoever. There are more and more every day. It is thousands upon thousands upon thousands. It's amazing how many people are coming across the border, and it's because the federal government is allowing it to happen. The United States government and the Mexican government. The Mexican government issues those folks visas to travel through Mexico to get to the United States.
Yes.
Then the United States stands down and lets them all come in.
Yes, I mean, it's absolutely a conspiracy to get them here by a number of countries who all want them to be here.
Right, and that is a federal conspiracy. Now, none of the localities can do anything about this. Roanoke can't do anything about this. Any of the little towns in Texas and Arizona, they can't do anything about it. They have no power to do anything about it. So what we're left with is, because our federal government is basically welcoming folks to illegally come across the border, then they are putting the burden upon the localities on what are they going to do about it. Now, back to, because that was something that I asked Sherman Lee about, you know, what do we do? You know, how, you know, this is potentially a major a financial issue also that could be coming our way. And I was very happy to hear Sherman say that, you know, he thinks that the federal government needs to foot the entire bill if anything were to come this way. He quote unquote, you know, he said Roanoke can't afford to cover the cost. I'd have a problem telling the taxpayers we have to cut this service to pay for this. Now, you don't hear that very often out of Roanoke city official, and I was so happy to hear that. You know, the typical thing is we're going to have to raise taxes to pay for this, or you know, or whatever. And his response was just the opposite. His response was, we cannot afford to foot the bill for this. The federal government is going to have to foot the bill if something were to come our way. And I'm not going to tell the taxpayers that we're going to cut certain services to pay for this potential issue.
Well, I guess that's a good thing. I mean, I agree with him on that. It's just, you know, at some point, what the localities can do is, you know, stop supporting politicians at the federal level who are putting them in this situation. Because all the people they think are so wonderful, the Obamas and the Harry Reids and the Mark Warners of the world, are the ones that have created the situation that they're now going to have to deal with. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it even goes so. When we're talking about our border, it goes back years and years. It goes back through Republicans, Democrats. Anyone who put their little finger on that little border, they were part of the problem.
I mean,
none of them tried to solve it.
Put through an amnesty bill that was a miserable, horrible failure. You know, and the Republicans have allowed the president. Of course, as you know, Bob Goodlatte said on one of the Sunday talking shows that the president hasn't done anything we can impeach him for, but he has broken a law enough where we can sue him. Yeah,
that whole lawsuit thing. I mean, I read some of the news on that. I mean, I'm just, come on, are you serious? You're going to sue the president? That's just... What is this? That is exactly one of the things that has ticked off so many conservative Republicans, is that we have politicians out there saying these little things like that, is try to make us feel better. Like, oh, look, we're fighting for you. Yeah, we don't like Obama either. We're out there. This lawsuit is worthless. It's going to go nowhere.
Well, and this is there's plenty of blame to go around, but the first thing that has to happen is the United States federal government has to, if you're going to stop this from happening. It's not an amnesty issue. It's not an issue with immigration laws. It's a border security issue. If the cartels and the people have figured out the loophole to get around, and they know that we're not going to send them back, and we know we're not going to stop them at the border, and we know we're going to take them in, and we know after they go through the detention center, we're going to let them go. They just let them go and say, you come back to court in 6 months, and they never show up for the court date. I mean,
I think it's 0.1%. 0.1% have shown up for their court dates.
They know the loophole, and they're going to take it. The only way to stop this from happening is to stop them from coming across the border. And then, when we stop them coming across the border, then they'll stop sending them. And then they can deal with the issues these kids have back in Honduras and Guatemala and places like that. It's not that complicated an issue to fix, but like I said, Sherman Lee, as much as I don't agree with him on politics, someone like him is put into, as you rightly said, a position where what are they going to do? And it's interesting to see the governor of Maryland, who's a screaming liberal, is saying we're not going to take any kids. We can't afford to do that.
Connecticut's just done the same thing. Connecticut, I used to live in Connecticut. That's where I went to high school. Connecticut is so liberal, it'll turn your stomach. And Connecticut is also turning away the children. Connecticut actually has a facility there where they have some folks housed right now. The federal government said we'd like to house, I think it was another, 200, 400 folks there. And Connecticut's response was, no, we can't do that because the building is unfit for anyone to live in. And we already have some people living in that building.
The liberal logic never fails to amaze and create sort of gallows laughter, because that's what's wrecking this country is the kind of attitude. But anyway, when we come back, we got to take our first break. Thank you for having those conversations. I think that was very interesting. It'll be we may be the first person to talk about the local impact of this on the Roanoke Valley.
Well, and I want to thank Sherman Lee too for actually sitting down and having coffee with me. He was very warm, very welcoming. He saw a citizen that was concerned, and he sat down and talked to me.
Well, as much as I disagree with Sherman Lee on policy issues a lot of times, he at least, I think, talks the talk about liberalism. I mean, I don't really believe he believes some of that stuff. A lot of the guys just do it, the Ray Ferrises of the world, talk about it and just use it as a campaign issue. I think Sherman actually believes some of the nonsense he talks about, and in that case, he's morally honest about his beliefs.
In this scenario where we sat down and talked, I can't say that I disagree with him on what he had said.
I can't. From his position, I have a hard time arguing with that as well. All right, let's take a first break. We got a couple more stories on the immigration, including the story about the entitled illegal immigrant that will probably make your teeth hurt because it'll make you so angry. Also, good news and bad news if you're a gun owner in the Blacksburg area. You're going to get a revamped gun range, but there's a catch that you might not like. More about these stories and the others on News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we're back. And again, I want to thank Mike for taking the time to stay on with Coffee with Sherman. And that was an interesting conversation you had with him. And like I said, I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
No problem. I enjoyed doing it.
Cool. I hope we can do more of that in the future. You're good at that sort of thing.
Well, if there's one thing that I'd love to do, it's to talk. This show fits in fine with me. My wife always complains anywhere we go together that we can't get in and out of any place quickly because I just find random people to stop and talk to.
Yes, my wife and I, when we go to Walmart, it's like you just have to budget out like 3 hours because it's inevitable. One of us will find somebody we know and have a conversation, and then it's like, you got frozen food in the buggy that's starting to melt. It's a bad time. All right, so I promised before the break I was going to give you a story that would make your eyes hurt because it would make you mad. And it's on. If you go to Michelle Malkin She's one of my favorite conservative bloggers, and she wrote just an absolutely great article about this. And it was interesting. I saw the left-wing media's portrayal of this guy a couple of days ago on, I think it was the CBS Morning News.
Jose Antonio Vargas.
Yes. Now, if you don't know who Jose Antonio Vargas is, he is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, which doesn't mean as much as he used to, I can assure you.
Is that just because you haven't gotten one yet?
No. I mean, you can be like, what's the kid from MSNBC that got Mia Farrow's son got the Walter Cronkite Award for journalism after he'd been on a TV for 3 days.
I remember that. That was just recently, right?
Yeah, it was so funny. So these awards don't
You're
matter
right, it
as much.
doesn't.
But basically, this guy he's a militant pro-immigration amnesty guy. He's from the Philippines. He's been illegally in the country for years. Basically went to the border to write about the border situation and tweeted and went through social media and basically bragged that he was going to violate the law and fly on an airplane even though he didn't have proper documentation.
Well, clearly that's not very smart. However, he probably felt it was okay to do that because isn't this the same guy who's been doing this for years?
Well, yes. Now, let me go. We jump ahead here in the story. He came from the Philippines as a child, but knowingly broke multiple laws as an adult in order to stay in the country. After being supplied with a fake passport, with a fake name, and a fake green card, and a bogus social security number, he committed perjury repeatedly on federal I-9 employment eligibility forms. In 2002, while pursuing his journalism career goals, an immigration lawyer told him he needed to accept the consequences of his law-breaking and return to the Philippines. He ignored the counsel and instead used a friend's address to obtain an Oregon driver's license under false pretenses. He gave him an 8-year golden ticket to travel by car, board trains, and airplanes, working as a prestigious newspaper, and even gained access to the White House, where crack Secret Service agents allowed him to attend a state dinner using his bogus Social Security number.
That's impressive.
Okay, so
he got into the White House.
He did.
And illegally and with illegal documents.
He is an activist.
Do you know what newspaper he worked for?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, whoever they are, that's a big fine right there. I own a company and employ a number of people, and I would never hire an illegal alien because there are major, major fines that come along with that.
So, after doing all that, he then brags about going to, so he goes to the airport. Only thing he has a picture. He posted a picture. He has his expired Filipino passport and a copy of the Constitution. Those are his traveling documents.
Is that all you need, I take it?
According to Jose Antonio Vargas. So, amazingly enough, after flaunting and publicly saying he's going to do it, somebody showed up and detained him. And now there's a Twitter campaign, "Don't deport Jose," and he's being called a hero by elite friends in the No Borders industry because he's being oppressed by the man for living in the shadows, and I mean he's being made into a hero. And I watched the CBS News report, and I knew better, obviously, because I didn't know all the details of this, but I knew a little bit about his backstory. But if you had never seen this, you would have thought he was like the next Rosa Parks. I mean, how dare they?
And that's how CBS portrayed this,
Yes.
I assume? Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
He broke the law. If you break the law, you don't get a pass because of something.
I never get a pass when it comes to the law.
No. Now, the story who gets angry about this story than anybody else?
Who?
Legal immigrants, people who go through the system, because right now there is hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants who are trying to go through the jacked up immigration system that we have to legally enter the country, and you got this jerk who's not only flaunting the law, but then making himself into a victim of flaunting the law.
Yeah, you're right. Legal immigrants do get ticked off about that. I have a couple legal immigrants working for me, and it does frustrate them. I have 2 women working for me that are legal immigrants. It took them roughly 10 years to get citizenship. 10 years. And they were so proud when they became U.S. citizens. I mean, the looks on their faces when they came into my office after going and taking the test and coming back and they're U.S. citizens, they were so excited. And they're so happy to be Americans. They worked so hard for it.
Yeah, I worked on a political campaign recently, and one of the women that worked with was working to become a legal citizen from Mexico, and this would just drive her absolutely bonkers. But I got to give you this quote. If you don't know who Bill de Blasio is, he is the new socialist mayor of New York City, and he has this priceless quote. "I stand in solidarity with journalist and advocate Vargas. He exemplifies what America is about." To quote Michelle Malkin, "That's true if America means protecting leftist lawbreakers from the consequences of their reckless, arrogant actions." And that's what America's becoming. If you break the law and you're doing something that the government wants you to do, then you're a hero. And if you break a law that they don't want to, last I checked, there was like this equal protection thing that was supposed to happen. Everybody's supposed to be treated the same.
No, not at all.
Not anymore.
No. That's long gone.
That's a double standard like you guys talk about.
Obama has definitely proven to America you can do whatever you want to do. Right. Have at it, people.
Bye-bye.
This is News Guardians. News Guardians.
I love your show, man. It's great. We just need to talk about it.
On WFJX, Fox Radio 910.
And we're back. We didn't go bye-bye. Well, I was ranting and raving about that Antonio Vargas guy, and I realized I had 2 seconds before the music stopped playing. Bye-bye. But anyway, we're back for another half an hour with News Guardian Chip and
Mike Powell.
Hey, so we talked about this briefly before the break, and there is a gun range that's run by the Forestry Service in Blacksburg. And it was built in the 1970s. And there's a happy little story that's running on WDBJ7 this morning. I saw it, actually. I watched the local news, and I try to watch the first 5 to 10 minutes of the CBS national news that comes on at 7, just to get a sense of what the liberal media, because, Charlie Rose is sort of the epitome of what liberal reporting is really about. So I get a sense of what their big issues are of the day before I come in here and spout off. But on a local level, they were talking about this happy little story about the Blacksburg gun range getting a facelift. It's been there since the 70s, hadn't really been worked on. They're going to put overhangs, and they're installing 9 new benches while adding some sound insulation that would limit noise around neighbors.
And who's paying for this?
Oh, taxpayers, of course. Now, for the most part, the range looks like it did when it was built in the 1970s. Part of the overhaul will also include security cameras.
Well, why do you need security cameras at a gun range?
Well, it said to keep vandalism down. According to the park officials, some shooters bring illegal materials to the range to shoot and blow up, including camouflage sandbags that were supposedly brought by the Corps of Cadets and just dumped behind the tree line. So they're going to have... Now, this highlights an issue, very well. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt for a second.
Wait a second. The Corps of Cadets, they're saying the Corps of Cadets vandalized it by putting sandbags behind the tree line so the bullets wouldn't carry on and hit someone else? Is that vandalism?
I suppose so. Now, if they had a problem with the Corps of Cadets did there, instead of putting security cameras out there, what should they do?
I'm thinking you call the Corps of Cadets, tell them to come take their protective sandbags out of there.
And say, if you don't come back here, we're going to ban you from coming to the shooting range or something like that. I mean, why do you need security cameras? And they know who did it.
Yeah, there's no secret there.
Yeah. Now, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt for a second. Let's say there really is a vandalism problem, even though if you read the article, several of the people that come to the range consistently say, well, we don't see any problems. It looks the same as it did in the 70s, so obviously it's not too vandalized. And last I checked, most gun owners that I know are very respectful of property and tend to, because they're all paranoid that somebody's going to take their guns away, they tend to act really, really good on stuff like this.
I've been to that gun range personally a couple times, and I haven't seen any vandalism.
I mean, if it looks like it did in the 70s, it's obviously holding up pretty well. But let's just go on the sake of argument that there might be some vandalism problems and the security cameras could be helpful. In a situation where you trusted the government, then maybe that's... But now we fast forward to 2014, where your government lies to you on everything. And you have an NSA spying scandal where every day there's a new revelation about them using something to spy on you. And we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to talk about how the Kindle Fire that they put up there could become the most ultimate personal spy device ever made. Because it's designed by Google, who's working with NSA, where they can actually, it may sound like a crazy conspiracy theory, but it could easily be used to monitor your home.
There's so much monitoring of us going on right now that would not surprise me at all.
So in that environment, what's the first thing the fact that security cameras are going to be there makes you think of?
Oh, in my mind, I'm picturing them basically just cataloging, logging every license plate that comes in there. Who is it that's got a gun? Who's shooting a gun? What type of gun is it that they're shooting? It's definitely not just to catch the Corps cadets.
Yeah,
that they already know about.
Now they mentioned the fact that local residents aren't happy about it, but they don't really get into. Basically, they just use a quote from the guy that says, I don't see any vandalism going on. They don't talk about the actual privacy issues that it would raise. Shockingly enough, that a local reporter didn't dig a little deeper into the story. But if I was Blacksburg's pretty far away from where I live, but if I was to use a gun range, I would probably look for someplace else to shoot my guns.
I'm pretty sure this is the same gun range that I've been to a couple of times. If it is, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and to run, fiber optic cable or whatever, they would need to go there so they could have a live video feed would be pretty expensive. So
they're just going to tape it.
They're not going to tape it. That's going to be a live feed. The government they're not putting in a VHS tape anymore.
Well, what's likely to get vandalized at this place now are the cameras.
Yeah, you better believe it.
So
the last thing that camera will see is a bullet coming right through it.
I know that's kind of and that's a sad state of affairs, that we just don't trust the government anymore. I mean, I used to think it was silly, all these conspiracy theories I hear about and so on and so forth. Well, not theories anymore, because we know for a fact that the government's spying on every single person in the country. There've always been the conspiracy folks out there. Well, I've always kind of been one of them, but just sort of quiet about it because people always call you a lunatic when you start saying anything about it. But thank God for Snowden, and the others, WikiLeaks folks, who have actually exposed a lot of this stuff and put the conspiracy people like myself into maybe a light now where maybe I wasn't so crazy. Now, I'm going to be careful on this next story, because I really don't want you to go and read this guy's stuff, because I'll call him Candace.
Candace?
Candace. He is a news reporter. News. Again, you go to Roanoke.com, and I don't advise you to do this, because if you click on his blog, he basically gets paid. So don't go to his site.
We'll just tell you about it.
Yes, please, don't click on his stuff, because you're basically emboldening him to do more of this nonsense.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be awful, though, because he really makes a fool out of himself while he does it. He's fun to talk about.
He is. Now, he's been making a big deal about Gadsden flag license plates. Have you seen those, the Gadsden flag?
Yeah, I think they actually look pretty cool.
They are. They're the yellow. You should know what they are. That's the yellow... don't tread on me, rattlesnake.
Yeah, the coiled up snake right in the middle of it.
You see him on. It was a flag that was popular back in the Revolutionary. It was almost the official flag of the United States at one point. In fact, there's a website called GadsdenGuardians.com where you can actually read the history of the "Don't Tread on Me" sign. But here is the story talks about the fact that. He goes out. First of all, he makes fun of people that have them, because, that's what Dan Casey does, because he hates, or Candace, sorry, because he hates Republicans and conservatives and anybody that doesn't agree with him politically. But then this article. First of all, it was the most popular article on the Roanoke site, according to him.
Huh.
So it got a lot of attention. But basically, they're very prevalent. There's a lot of them going around. It seems they're everywhere, as one person said. And so here's the deal. He says some things in the article that I just think are hilarious. One of them is, he says, I'm not going to publish, I have no intention of publishing your tag. Okay. At the top of the article, there are pictures of 4 tags. Now, he's very clear that he didn't take the pictures, because he has from and where he got the image from. But I'm not going to publish your tag.
Oh, no. I got to back you up here. I'm looking at something right now. There's a different part of the site where it's, it is his article. And off to the right, it's got a picture of the license plate, all the letters on it. And it says in the bottom right corner of the picture, shot by Dan.
Oh, so, of course, have no fear. I have no intention of publishing your tag. Dan lies to you in his own article. It's right there in front of you. Oh, then he says, I cannot find out through your tags even if I knew what your tag number is. Can you know at least 5 tag numbers that are published on your website? Now, I will tell you, there are ways to find out information about people through the internet on their license plate. You can find all sorts of good stuff if you have somebody's license plate number. I'm just saying, you can. Carfax.com. You can do that. You can get a lot of information on somebody just using Carfax and paying a few dollars if you wanted to do it.
Absolutely. So what is Dan trying to do effectively by showing the photos of particular people's license plates with the Gadsden flag?
He wants to get rid of the license plates because he finds them offensive. And he says in here, the other thing is funny too. He said, for your phone number and your social security number, I don't care if you own guns or how many. That's a load of crud too.
You know he's already linked into that Blacksburg camera deal.
Dan Casey's written numerous times about how much he wants common sense gun control, which means he cares very much about how many guns you have, what kind of guns you have, what kind of ammunition you have. He cares very much. He's a liberal, scum-sucking pig, and he wants to know how many guns you have, and he doesn't want you to have any.
You know what? I also want common sense gun control, which means the common sense thing we're thinking about is anyone can have a gun.
Yeah,
that's common sense.
Common sense gun control is...
I like our Constitution. I'm down with that.
Yeah,
that's the common sense I like to go by.
Second Amendment, that's crazy. But anyway, so I like to know that there's a lot of people out there that aren't involved in politics, but they've chosen to have this license plate on their car, and I think there's a lot of people that believe, and think about the people that have those license plates. They're generally not joiners. Don't tread on me basically says I want to be left alone to live my life and pursue my own happiness and not be bothered by the government. So those people don't tend to join stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yes.
They would like to be left alone, not have their license plate plastered on the Roanoke Times website.
I would say so. So there is a website where people can, this looks like a new website called GadsdenGuardians.com, where you can go, and it looks like a place for people who have those license plates to kind of work together on stuff. So it's an interesting site, so you should check out GadsdenGuardians.com. Now, the other piece of this, now I will say this, there's one thing I agree with liberals on.
I
want to agree with a liberal on one thing about this. One thing.
What is it?
Somebody makes a point on here that you have to pay extra from the state to get the personalized license plate, and then that money goes to the state. So effectively, you're giving the state mechanism more money to waste because for your own vanity plate. I do not have a Gadsden flag license plate for the simple reason that I do not want to give the state extra money.
I'm going to spin liberal on you here. I bet that the license plate extra money that you're putting in there probably goes to the children. Therefore, Chip, I have just now determined you hate children by not having a Gadsden flag plate.
Gosh,
you hate the kids.
You caught me again. I hate children. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hate children. I'll change. I'll get Gadsden. I'll get 3. I'll get 3 Gadsden license plates now. All right, so we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, I've got a couple of quick items I want to touch base on. A voicemail by a top Obama administration issue is a clear violation of federal law, so I'm sure there will be a strongly worded press release coming soon, instead of putting her in jail for violating the law. And there's a story about, kind of a wonky story about, you may not know what the Export-Import Bank is, but Democrats have hated it for years until somebody decided to get rid of it, and then all of a sudden they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And we'll tell you why they had a change of heart in just a minute on Fox Radio 910 and your News Guardians.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we're back for our last segment, one of the fastest hours in local radio. We're back here with Mike Powell.
Good morning, Roanoke.
And Chip Tarbutton, that's me, and we're here to talk about a few more stories. We'll touch on them briefly while we have just a minute or two. And we had a lot of reaction, though, on that Gadsden flag story. There's a local political activist that she finds it quite encouraging that so many people have those license plates. And I do, too, even though I have my little wonky, purist attitude about the license plates aside.
Only because you hate children, but that's...
Yeah, well, That's a well-determined fact by most people.
Yeah, there are 29,000 of those license plates in the state right now.
I'm not surprised by that. I mean,
and they haven't been out that long.
And it seems like most of them are in the Roanoke area, so it's not surprising that somebody's trying to sort of reach out to those people, and it's also not surprising that somebody like Dan Casey would like to humiliate people into not having the license plates. And I'm not going to humiliate you. It's a personal choice why I don't have one. But on my old car, I just got a new car, so I haven't got any stickers on it yet because I'm too lazy to get one. But I always had a Gadsden flag sticker in my car window for years, and I plan on getting another one. I just haven't had a chance to procure one yet because I'm lazy and,
If you feel like being a little more offended by Dan Casey's article, just so you know, which we didn't say before, the very last sentence in his article states that he's waiting to see the Gadsden flag license plate that says, I'm not going to say the whole word, but a-hole on it. That is his opinion on anyone who has that license plate, that you're an a-hole. Thanks.
Well, Dan has always been, Dan is a paragon of virtue and morality. And again, don't click on his website blog. Don't encourage him. Don't allow. The more you click on his stuff, the more he's going to write about stuff like this.
Yeah, don't click on it. He effectively just called all of our listeners a-holes.
Basically. So I tell you this. I do it as a service to the community clicking on it. I would rather, honestly, clicking on his website and reading his stuff is something like, getting a root canal. I would rather do anything than to click on his stuff because not only is I think he's a horrible person and a horrible writer, but I just don't want to encourage. I just don't want to help fund the badness that is Dan Casey. But I do it as a public service for you, so you don't have to.
We will endure the root canal for you.
Yes, right. I give, even to the children. Now, two quick stories. I found this on theblaze.com, and there's a voicemail. Now, if you may not know who Hilda Solis was, but she was the former labor secretary. And you may not know what the Hatch Act is, but the Hatch Act is a law that's been passed for several years that prohibits political activity by government officials on official time. So, you can't be at work soliciting, because, and it makes sense, because if I'm the labor secretary, I have intrinsic. It would be easy for me to have a violation where I could basically use my political position to solicit for money.
Wait, hold on here. Last week, Obama flew on that very expensive airplane, Air Force One, to Arizona and Colorado to shoot pool and raise money.
Oh, we don't care about that.
Okay. All right, pass. So he can do that. I forgot. He does anything that he wants to do.
Well, see, he has to travel with Air Force One because of security.
And so when he was shooting pool, that wasn't on my dime. When he was out doing fundraisers,
of course it was,
that wasn't on my dime.
It's fine. The president. Everything the president does. He can't. Don't try to think this through, Mike. Don't use logic. Don't use logic gene again.
Maybe Hilda Solis was just following his example.
Maybe. So there's a voicemail, and I won't bore you with it because of time constraints, but basically it's obvious she's using her political position in the voicemail to not only solicit for campaign contributions from someone, but she also does it using her official capacity as labor secretary to kind of gently muscle somebody into a more compliant frame of mind to give some money. Now, Daryl Issa, who does a lot of these investigations, unearthed his voicemail, and he's leaked it out to the press. Now I'm waiting for another strongly worded press release from Daryl Issa that'll tell me how terrible this is, and I need to vote for Republicans.
That's what we do these now. There's no point in no firing anyone, no putting anyone in jail for breaking the law. Just say something strongly worded to them.
If she really violated the law, which it looks like she did, but I don't know for sure. But let's just say she did. If she violated the law, I'll only be satisfied when I see her in a pair of handcuffs heading towards a courtroom to get tried. When I see her in a orange jumpsuit going to prison, then I'll be happy. Until then, I don't care. I mean, they can talk about all these stories all they want to until somebody in Congress shows enough spine to actually do something about these people who are constantly breaking the laws and violating what the legislative branch has put in to control the executive branch. Then it's just a lot of whining.
Well, luckily, the government is setting a precedent here. You know, and that's stuff that comes up. It's setting a precedent in that you can do whatever you like and nothing's going to happen to you.
Okay. Well, they've set a great precedent in that. The other story I wanted to touch on briefly before we head off is it's kind of a geeky story about something that you don't know much about, which is probably the Export-Import Bank. And it's basically a federal banking institution that's been in place for about 80 years, and it's supposed to give low-interest loans to U.S. businesses who want to sell products overseas. And sometimes they give them to Mexican drug cartels. That's what got them in trouble in the last couple of years. And over the past 15 years, Democrats have savaged this institution. They've called it all sorts of bad. And it was all because Enron. Remember Enron?
Yeah.
And
Who could forget Enron?
Enron they got a big loan to build a Chinese steel mill. And, of course, that was hurt U.S. workers, and it was a terrible thing, and so on and so forth. And, in fact, in 2008, when President Obama was running for office, he called the Export-Import Bank little more than a fund for corporate welfare, which he's right about. He was absolutely right. It is a fund for corporate welfare. So I don't think the government should be doing that. It's a private industry. They want to go overseas, lower the tax rates, and let them do it themselves. But now, all of a sudden, their charter's up in September, and the Republicans want to kill the whole thing and destroy it, take it out, which is a good thing. I'm happy they're going to try to do that. But now the Democrats are all gung-ho to save it.
And why would that be?
Because the Chamber of Commerce is all gung-ho to save it. And their corporate interests that they're in bed with are gung-ho to save it. So therefore, now they're gung-ho to save it. So now they're talking about how it's going to cost America. A few years ago, it was taking away American jobs. But now it's costing American jobs if we get rid of it. And to quote the end of the article, I think is very astute. It has to do with the money the chamber and other business organizations are more than willing to give the politicians to keep crony capitalism alive and well in America.
Surprise, surprise.
Doesn't that make you always follow the money? It never fails. Well, Mike, thanks for coming in. Thanks for taking the Sherman lead. Well, that was great.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me again. And it's going to be a beautiful day today, so everyone get out there and enjoy it.
And we'll have this episode of News Guardians on newsguardians.com shortly, so look for that. And thanks again. Have a great day, Roanoke.